The Grand Prix of Japan has concluded. We saw a great victory by Max Verstappen, who managed to finish in first position even beyond expectations, because as I told you yesterday, I expected a stronger McLaren. We saw it stronger at the end of the race that came very close to Verstappen, but did not manage to win. And so if we want it, is a bit of a disappointment this for McLaren, because it had the best car, it was the favorite team to win, and instead Max won. Norris takes second, Piastri third, followed by Ferrari's Leclerc in fourth, with the other Ferrari, that of Hamilton, in seventh, and we saw Ferrari a bit there in the fight to be the third force with Mercedes. Let's examine the details now. Let's analyze every episode of the race. It was a fairly quiet and calm race. There were no eventful episodes except for the one involving Norris and Verstappen, which we will analyze later. We need to examine the telemetry and statements from the Ferrari drivers after the race. Please leave a supportive like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you haven't already. And now let's look at everything in detail. First, I'll show you the standings again, this time with the gaps included. Since they may not be clearly visible, I'll read them out for you. Verstappen leads, followed by Norris at 1.4 seconds, Piastri at 2.1 seconds. The key gap is between Verstappen and Leclerc, which stands at 16 seconds. While between Verstappen and Hamilton, there are 29 seconds, so the first Ferrari took 16 seconds from a Red Bull that is not the first force, so we say that on average, Ferrari takes 2/3 per lap, but not from McLaren, from Red Bull, and obviously also from McLaren consequently. However, this is a bit the strange thing because Red Bull was not given as the first force, or anyway, it has in fight with McLaren, and instead this time, yes, we saw it like this in the Japan Grand Prix, but also thanks to Max's performances. In fact, Verstappen this weekend made the difference. Right on time, on the lap, he had a sensational weekend from pole position, but also today in the race. In my opinion, guys, Max was perfect, and you know that I am very realistic of those things as they are, and he did one of his best races ever, in my opinion, because he really managed the pace well from the start to the end of the race. Especially not having the best car, it's a bit strange to me, in the sense that we have always seen Max drive very strong cars from 2021 onwards, after the ground effect cars of 2022, 2023, 2024 in the first part of the season, and now Verstappen finds himself driving a car that is very, let's say, fixed on the front, very pointy as they say, and he still managed to have a great race and beat Norris and Piastri, who are a bit the real losers from this race, in my opinion. Obviously, they bring home many points because they finished in second place, third position. But let's be clear, McLaren should have won this race here in Japan, also because it's a circuit more in its favor. Compared to Red Bull, there are many supportive turns, many fast turns, the initial snake, yet Verstappen managed to make a difference. And thanks to the pole position, because after all, it's thanks to the pole position he managed to win, but he managed to bring home the pole position and then also the victory. To the first position a bit, because Japan is one of those old-style circuits where there are not many overtaking points, and so if you manage to keep the head of the race, unless there is a wrong strategy, but you manage to bring home also the victory. Let's do a little recap of the race itself now. So let's look at every episode that happened from the start, and then let's also look at the episode between Verstappen and Norris, and let's also analyze Ferrari's race. So let's start right away with the start that went it went very peacefully. There were no glaring episodes, but let's look at it together in detail. We see here with the start, with Verstappen starting from the pole, then the two McLarens that follow. Let's go ahead, and we also see here that Leclerc already wanted to try on plates to attack him, but he didn't find the space, and so he had to let go. Even Antonelli had the pace to be there and attack Russell. Among other things on Antonelli later, we will talk about the sensational race he did. And so they all challenged in order, no one changed position, they all kept the same position, and even Hamilton stayed behind Ajar in the first laps. Then let's move on, let's go see the first laps, how they went, and what was the pace of the others. So we saw earlier the overtaking of Hamilton on Ajar, who immediately freed himself. This was great. Hamilton, who started on white tires, employed a different strategy than his competitors. And here, Ferrari did well, in my opinion, to start Hamilton with white rubber and differentiate him with the Leclerc also, because he had to try something different. And we know that Hamilton manages the tires very well, so the fact that he did not lose position at the start benefited him, even though after he himself said that he did not find much rhythm at the end of the race. At the start of the race, he appeared strong, even overtaking Jar with white rubber and potentially challenging Mercedes, according to observers. So the positions remain the same with Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri. Let's move on. positions, and here comes the first slightly more striking moment, namely the pit stop moment where we see Verstappen and Norris exit the pit lane, and Verstappen rightly did not leave space for Norris, who was coming out of his pit stop and lined up alongside Verstappen. Norris was hoping Verstappen would leave space, but Verstappen didn't. This was more of Norris's mistake. A naivety that shows us once again how the driver who has the best car, that is, Lando Norris, along with Oscar Piastri, can't take advantage of the moments to get ahead and try to win the races, guys. He is a driver who objectively can't make a difference at this moment, despite having the best car. You don't need to be as good as Max, because there are few at Max's level. They are the world champions. Secondly, we have few champions who can make a difference. Max Verstappen may currently be one of the strongest, if not the best driver on the grid, but he also has the best car. You can't afford to make mistakes like this, Lando Norris. By the way, it also went well because he could also risk maybe losing control of the car on the grass and hitting the barriers. It's hinted very close. Then he laughed about it and joked in the post-podium, but damn, he risked there Norris and made a bit naive mistake in my opinion. He could also damage the bottom if he wanted, so be careful. Let's review it together anyway. We also see the video that we are going to comment together. Let's see a bit what happened in detail. Then here we see Norris who returns to the box. I remove a moment. The audio, okay, returns to the box. P stop, sorry, P stop. Quite fast, comes out, and there was Verstappen who had made the P-stop slow, so Norris could also take advantage of it. But once you see that you are side by side, but you are behind, because guys, I also move from here, you see that Norris is behind compared to Verstappen. It makes no sense to continue in that traction and go off the track. So I didn't understand the sense of Norris, what he was looking for. It's obvious that Verstappen doesn't leave you space, and then you have the grass. So really a situation that didn't make sense in this case. I mean, he really took a big risk. Look how close he got to the barriers. He was losing control of the single-seater, which was sensational. A serious mistake, but he got lucky. We don't talk much about these mistakes when things go well, but it was a serious one. Of Norris, who can't afford to do it if he wants to be the driver who wants to win the World Championship. Anyway, let's move on, and let's comment instead on Ferrari's strategy. So, therefore, we are left with, let's say, Verstappen and Norris, who made the pit stop. They left the pit. We then saw Kimi, guys. Now, let's also talk a bit about the race. Kimi started with medium tire. He had a good start to the race, but he was a bit more in trouble. Russell managed his tires well in the first laps, allowing him to have a longer stint compared to the others. And he made sensational times. He was running on the high 32. When everyone else had pitted, he managed his medium tires very well, running almost faster than Hamilton, who had hard tires, so something incredible, great. Kimi, because he found himself at Russell's level. We will see it later with telemetry, but we saw Kimi already very mature on the race pace. And be careful, because this means that in the next races, we could find a Kimi also fighting with Russell and who could also beat him. So great Kimi, because he had a sensational race. Let's go on. Here we see where Hamilton played his position on Kimi Antonelli. In this sense here, he made this mistake. Here at the last chicane, going long, he had fallen behind Verstappen, who had reached him, and immediately after Hamilton returned to the pits to mount medium rubber, but here going long, he blocked Verstappen, who lost a bit of time. But especially Hamilton himself lost a bit of time to try to go to attack Kimi, because after stopping at the pits, he was very attached to Kimi after the stop and could almost overtake him. He had arrived at a 7/10 gap. If he hadn't made this mistake, we would have found a Hamilton in front of Kimi Antonelli, but even there it was difficult to manage the position, in the sense that even if Hamilton had been in front of Kimi after the stop, Kimi objectively had a better pace, so he probably would have overtaken him again, but it's a pity for this mistake that Hamilton made. Here we also saw the team radio between Norris and Verstappen. Well, there's no need to comment on Norris's mistake in this case with Verstappen, who took advantage of it, being the cunning guy he is, but rightly took advantage of it. In that case, let's move on, and here we see again the usual situation. So with Verstappen, Norris and Piastri behind, with Piastri who got very close to Norris, and here was the theme of the papaya rules if you want, so whether to give the team order or not. In my opinion, guys, it's right to let them run freely in this case. Don't give team orders. We are at the beginning of the season. They are 1 and 2, and their track position remains unchanged. In my opinion, Piastri didn't have the pace to catch up with Verstappen, because overtaking in Japan is really difficult. In my opinion, he made the right call by not following the team order, as he needed to maintain a much faster pace than the car ahead of him. However, you could see that Piastri had slightly more, especially towards the end compared to Norris. Race here. They also show us Kimi. We move on here with Verstappen in the last laps, and then we saw Aguiar, who scored points. Great race also by Aguiar, guys. to underline because he started there in front. He was ahead of Hamilton at the start of the race. Then he managed the pace and seems to be among the Red Bull drivers besides Verstappen the most in form, because we have a Tsunoda who anyway, okay, started from behind, tried to recover, but had a very anonymous race and lose on even more so. So Aguiar seems to be the driver who is still a rookie, but is the one who is doing better in the Red Bull sphere beyond Verstappen. They could perhaps give an opportunity to Aguiar in Red Bull. This is a bit of the provocation I want to make, but obviously there may be the risk of burning a young man. But damn, Aguiar's performance was very convincing and impressive. And you want to comment now on the overall performance of Ferrari and then go and see the telemetry as well, because there are many interesting things about it from the telemetry. We can see a bit of things. So P4 and P7, a rather anonymous race for Ferrari, a race where we saw Ferrari struggling quite a bit, especially in managing the tires at the end of the race, and there was also no pace. In addition to managing the degradation, there was no race pace. You could see that Leclerc and Hamilton were running 3-4 tenths more nothing compared to the others. The pace was in line with Mercedes. In my opinion, it was also a bit lower than Mercedes, in the sense that Mercedes had slightly more pace, but being behind it could not overtake, because it is really difficult to overtake the Japan. So we saw a Ferrari that is third, fourth force as pace. Unfortunately, because updates are needed on this SF25, it is not convincing. Hamilton always suffers under steering. Leclerc tries to compensate this with a more pointy front end. So a little bit of a balance shifted on the front end, because they always try to increase the incidence of the wing. But damn guys, this car does not turn enough, and this is a load problem. Even Leclerc said we did everything perfectly. However, even the pit stops went very well. And despite this, guys, the performances were not there. So a rather anonymous race for Ferrari. A pity we will see in Bahrain when the updates will arrive if Ferrari will be able to take a step forward and at least go there in front to fight, or with Red Bull or with McLaren, and then try to reach the first team and the first force. So now Ferrari finds itself as the third force. It has to try to do step by step and reach those in front, but the gap of 16 seconds between Verstappen and Leclerc is emblematic of a Ferrari in difficulty. And I want to comment now instead on the... Let's go see the telemetry together, and let's see a bit where the drivers made the difference and where instead they struggled a bit more. So let's see, the lap times of Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri were quite similar. I'll show you the times anyway. And this shows us that Verstappen made a clear difference with the Red Bull, even though the car wasn't the best on the grid. And you can also see this from the telemetry. I took the best lap of Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri. And it's clear to see that Verstappen doesn't have the best car, but he still manages, with his driving style, to brake more at the limit, to brake more aggressively, compared to the others, and to make a difference at clear points of the track. For example, he manages to go faster at the hairpin, he manages to go faster at the last chicane, he also manages to go faster in the first sector in the snake of a McLaren that still has a lot of load. This demonstrates how Verstappen's driving style has set him apart. The race pace between Leclerc's Ferrari and Russell's Mercedes was very similar, with Ferrari being slightly faster on medium tires and at the start of the race with heavier fuel loads. Then later, with hard tire, the first laps of Leclerc were good. Then he struggled a bit more at the end of the race with Russell, who was a bit faster. And we also see this lap here, the fast lap of Leclerc. Sorry, it's a lap, not the fast lap, but it's a lap at lap 50, so with a bit more worn hard tire. And we see the difference with Leclerc, who struggles a bit more in the snake. Then turn 8 goes very strong. Ferrari manages to enter much stronger Leclerc, and then in the stretches he struggles a bit more. You see that also as engine power, the hybrid was not managed optimally at the end of the race. Starting Leclerc struggled a bit more and also lost in the stretches. Let's compare Antonelli and Hamilton. Kimi, especially on medium tires, was very strong at the end of the stint compared to Hamilton on hard tires. This is absurd. A harder tire for Hamilton, softer for Antonelli. Even on lap 25, Antonelli was faster. A sensational performance and great management by Kimi. With hard tires, he made the difference, going stronger than Hamilton, who struggled more, likely because he pushed too hard in Kimi's wake during the first laps and couldn't manage the tires as well. And he paid for this at the end of the race. If we see also the difference on lap times, always lap 50. To see a difference between the two, we see a much stronger Kimi in the snake, stronger also in turn 8. And in the stretches also the hybrid makes a difference at Mercedes compared to Ferrari. Let's go on. We see the difference between Verstappen and Tsunoda, because guys, there is an abyss. That is, Verstappen really made a huge difference. Made a difference of about a second per lap at the start of the race and then a little less in the second part of the race. But we are talking about 5 tenths anyway of Verstappen. That, anyway, on Tsunoda made a difference from 5 tenths to a second per lap, so it is true the first race is Tsunoda and Red Bull, but we will see if it will improve. And instead, I want to show you the difference between Russell and Antonelli, because it is emblematic. We have a very similar start to the race, with the pace between the two with medium tire, almost identical, maybe slightly slower than Kimi, who did a few higher laps, but more or less similar. Then Kimi extended the stint with Russell, who stopped earlier, and then the second part of the race, really, Kimi was flying, he was going very strong, and in fact, he also recovered him at the end of the race. However, this shows us how Kimi is now ready. He had the same race pace as Russell practically, and he was going very strong. He managed to handle the tires very well, so now he just needs to put together the qualifying lap, in my opinion. That's a bit his weak point at the moment, but guys, on the race pace, Kimi is really devastating. And the very last comment I want to make always about Ferrari, that guys, we should not beat ourselves up in the sense that it was a difficult race. We knew that Japan was not an ideal track for the red because there are many curves in support. We have seen precisely the 7th position of Hamilton, and we have seen the 4th position of Leclerc. If we want, Leclerc tried to stay at maximum potential, but as he also said, they did everything perfectly, but it was not enough. And this is a bit the thing that leaves me the sea in the mouth, in the sense that if they had made mistakes, there were still motivations at the base. Instead, it's really a Ferrari that currently can't keep up with the others. These updates are needed to try to improve the single-seater, especially in corner rotation, which is currently missing. You can really see from the onboard that the car makes more corrections. There are more counter-steering, wheel less, and this inevitably affects the driving, the drivability, and also the management of the tires. So this is along of Antonelli a bit. This is the summary of Ferrari. There's not much else to say. In my opinion, we have to wait for the updates that will come in Bahrain, and we hope that more convincing results will come. Tell me your opinion on this Grand Prix that we have seen of Japan, the 3rd race of the season. What were the most exciting moments? In your opinion, it was a race anyway quite boring, I must be honest. There were not many overtakes, but we know these tracks here with very technical layouts are very nice to see, especially in qualifying, but then with these ground effect cars so wide, it is also hard to overtake, and we saw it even today in the race. But tell me yours on the race of Japan. Tell me what you think. Please leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any video that comes out here on the channel. Every day, I update you on all the news about Formula 1 and specifically about Ferrari. I leave you other related videos. From Nasadutto, see you next video.